value levels.
But that's a terrible argument. It's a terrible argument. First of all, the question of whether the tariff policy is effective is a different question. But the argument made by the apologists for the current Chinese trade relationship is, look, so we've lost all these jobs, so we've lost, all these factories and everything have moved to China, but we get cheap products. But you know what? I get to sell stuff to you and you get to buy it. That's not a trade relationship. That's a purchase. And that's not the justification for trade.
There you guys have it. That's from the man himself. Our good old former premier Stephen Harper says it himself. That's not trade. That's called purchasing. But what we have here, and I want to talk about this because Pierre Poilievre, guys, he just won a massive victory, 87.4% in support in the leadership review that happened in Calgary this weekend. Conservatives are heading into 2026 completely unified. But what we're seeing all across the mainstream media, obviously in the Globe and Mail, is everybody is sowing division around the Conservatives. It's manufactured division. They're purposely trying to dissuade people from voting Conservative. But let's get into the article real quick. It goes, the future of Pierre Poilievre's Conservative Party will collide this week with its past. The party as run by Stephen Harper. The party's 3-day convention in Calgary is being followed by nearly half a week's worth of events beginning Monday to mark 20 years since Mr. Harper first led the Conservatives to electoral victory, serving up an immediate contrast between the two leaders. Much was made in Calgary of the fact that Mr. Poilievre received 87.4% support in his leadership review, more than Mr. Harper secured when he had to face the membership after losing the 2004 election. Mr. Harper would go on to win 3 governments after that, raising the question of whether Mr. Poilievre can pull off a win of his own. So I'm going to stop right here, guys, because I think this is really a key place to stop, because look what they're doing here. Poilievre just won 87.4% support. This is a sweeping victory. This is widespread support for a leader going into an election, right? And Harper got less than that after losing in the 2004 election. And then he went on to win 3 subsequent governments. And so watch how the media is actually framing this, right? They don't lead with, Pierre Poilievre is cementing control with overwhelming support. Whatever you think about the Conservatives, this isn't I'm not smearing the Liberals or the NDP. I want to discuss how the media is actually portraying a Conservative victory, right? And so they're leading with doubt. They're raising the question of Mr. Poilievre if he can actually pull off a win of his own. But he has almost 90% of the vote. This is insane. It's a setup. It's essentially a setup because the media needs you to doubt Poilievre despite the overwhelming result, guys. And so this brings in they bring in the critics to manufacture division of narrative, right? This isn't anything new, guys. We see this actively, and I've been saying this in a couple videos previously. The NDP is always there to support the Liberals whenever they need it, right? Jagmeet Singh, he was always there. He was basically Trudeau's right-hand man for 10 years, right? And where was he? He had a seat at the table, at the governing table. The NDP is now stepping up to smear the CPC, the Conservatives, in tandem with the Liberals. Why? Because we're moving into an election cycle. And so EB's comments last week around treason, the timing is impeccable. And it's just to sow discord in the country. They're polarizing sides and to shake Conservatives that are on the fence, right? And this always happens, guys. The only beneficiary of EB's comments is Carney. It's garnering more support for Carney. It's anybody that's on the fence for Pierre is gonna say, hey, yeah, they're kind of dancing with this idea. I might go vote Liberal. That's the idea, right? This is how smear campaigns work, right? They polarize the hardened supporters and then they shake up who's not really there, right? And so we need to always have our focus on the upcoming election sides because everything that's happening right now in Canadian politics is focused around these 2026 elections. And everybody's playing their part, right? The Greens are I wouldn't be surprised if Elizabeth May starts coming out with some kind of rhetoric as well to smear the Conservatives to also gain a potential seat in government after the 2026. It goes, the former Conservative cabinet minister Jason Kenney said he thinks he can, but it will take work. Mr. Poilievre, he said, has alienated traditional supporters such as provincial and business leaders in the past. Mr. Kenney said he needs to mend fences with them and also with former Conservative voters who've left for the Liberals because they want to see a serious response to the threat posed by US President Donald Trump. That doesn't mean dropping the broad populist appeal and the focus on the kitchen table economics, but it does mean, I think, demonstrating more statesmanship and gravity, Mr. Kenney said. That starts by actually naming Mr. Trump. He said, noting Mr. Poilievre failed to do that in his Friday night speech to delegates. Pretending that Trump doesn't exist is not a strategy for dealing with an 800-pound gorilla who body slams this country every week, he said. And so look at this like imagery that they're using. 800-pound gorilla that's just slamming our economy. Pretending Trump doesn't exist is not a strategy. Let me show you guys Poilievre's actual Trump strategy. And he's come out with it several times in the past, and he's said it publicly. And this is, I'm going to paraphrase, but he says, we will obviously call President Trump and tell him that the tariffs are destructive and they should be lifted on day one and a new deal negotiated. He even has a 7-point plan, and I found it. It goes dollar for dollar retaliation tariffs, all tariff revenue to affected workers and businesses, not to government, emergency bring it home tax cut, scrap the C-69, greenlight LNG pipelines and the mines, free trade with Canada, so knock down all of the interprovincial barriers. Why hasn't Carney talked about interprovincial barriers of trade? Not once. There's no mention of it. Rebuild the military and control our borders, and target U.S. swing states before 2026 congressional elections. He publicly condemned Trump's tariffs. Common sense conservatives condemned President Trump's massive, unjust, and unjustified tariffs on Canada's already weak economy. That's what Pierre said. His economic fortress strategy is to turbocharge oil and gas development, build pipelines to get resources to world markets, and lessen dependence on the American market. So Kenney's claim, pretending that Trump doesn't exist, it's just simply false. Here's what Pierre's actual strategy is. It's to deal with Trump first, negotiate on day one to alleviate the tariffs, and then build a long-term strategy. Guys, you cannot start diversifying markets if 80% of your economy is focused on one market and it's the only country you border. You first have to make amends with that market before you go to different ones. That's just common sense. Alleviate short-term pain and then build the long-term however you want. You can't build for the future if you have 25% tariffs pressuring and destroying your economy. And that's exactly what they're doing. Where's Carney? Why hasn't he talked to Trump? No, he's going to go around the world on this big smear campaign of Donald Trump. Meanwhile, the Canadian economy is just getting decimated every day. But no. But Kenney wants to attack, Pierre to attack Donald Trump by name in his speeches. Why? Because it's going to help Carney. It's going to help that Carney narrative that Pierre Poilievre can't stand up to Trump. They're just smearing the guy for no reason. It's for a reason. It's for the 2026 election. We need to negotiate pragmatically, hit them for dollar if we're going to do that. But just don't make it personal, guys. There's no need for theater. There's no need for theater. If we did things pragmatically, just went to Washington, worked on a deal for a week, we would have had this thing solved immediately. That's not a strategy, guys. We need economic nationalism. We need substance over theater, guys. And this is what Pierre's actual policies are trying to achieve, right? He goes, Mr. Peters was not yet born when the modern-day Conservative Party was forged from a merger of the Progressive Conservatives and the Canadian Alliance. Tensions between the two factions dominated party politics for years afterward and hampered the party's electoral success as rivals accused Mr. Harper of having hidden social agenda. So even here, I'm just going to shortly, even here they're trying to, this happened back in the day, but the parties actually merged. Like the two warring factions within the Conservatives, they actually merged, right? So it's always present day discord, and then let's sow it. Back in the day, even when Harper was there was some kind of BS going on. They have to be pushing it, right? let's not talk about all of the BS that the liberals did, over the last 10 years, and all the discord that they've been sowing and all of that. No. The conservatives are the ones that are crazy, right? It's just media manipulation. Here we go. The Ontario Progressive Conservatives, led by Doug Ford, scheduled their convention at the same time as the federal one. Tim Houston, the PC Premier of Nova Scotia, said publicly last week he's not a member of the federal party. Ian Brody, who has previously played several key roles in the federal party, said he's been watching to see if federal-provincial party tensions will become a new minefield for Mr. Poilievre. But he said, by and large, the red versus blue Tory divisions are a thing of the past. Now, Conservatives face the challenge of recognizing why people voted for Mr. Carney's Liberals. So they sow the discord and then they admit that doesn't actually exist. That doesn't actually exist, right? So I want to stop here and really kind of dig into this, right? Because it goes, Doug Ford scheduling the convention at the same time. Both parties had constitutional obligations, guys, to hold these conventions. The federal Conservatives announced their date in June 2025. Ford announced his later, but it was at the start of the fiscal year, right, for the provincial party. Ford's campaign manager, Corey Tanaki, he said, I don't think there's any malice in any of this, but we make decisions for our own reasons. Is there tension? Sure, there might be tension. Ford criticized Pierre during the election. They only spoke for the first time in March 2025 after years of not talking. Sure, they don't have to like each other. That doesn't mean because they don't like each other that some conservative would rather vote liberal because Poilievre and Ford might not like each other. That doesn't make any sense. But this is exactly where the article starts burying things. It goes, the article mentions Poilievre's team seeking to mend fractured relationships, but it doesn't actually tell you what that actually means. So here's what they're not telling you. The Poilievre's new campaign manager, Steve Outhouse, who was hired in December 2025, made mending fences with Ford and Houston a priority. He actually reached out to them to mend these fences, to unify the party so that there is no bad blood. They don't talk about that, though. Sources have said that there's a desire on all sides for things to move on. So yes, sure, there's tension. That's normal. It's politics. Everybody's pushing for their own slice of the pie. Who's going to be more influential? And Pierre is actively working to fix it. That's not distancing. That's normal political friction being resolved, guys. And Tim Houston publicly said that he's not a member, guys, of a federal party. But Poilievre's senior advisor chastised Houston's staff during provincial elections. But again, Outhouse reached out in December as a priority to mend the relationship. And here's the key line from the article. Red versus blue Tory divisions are a thing of the past. The media wants you to think that there's still this PC, this conservative ideological split, guys. That doesn't exist. But their own sources quite literally admitting this, man. And why all of this really matters to Canadians. And this is what the Globe and Mail and other mainstream media want you to believe, guys. That 87.4% that, Pierre Poilievre won the 87.4% support. But there's no Trump strategy, even though he has a 7-point plan that he plans on negotiating on day one. Premiers are distancing themselves from him, which is misleading because the temporary friction is actively being resolved. And business leaders are alienated, which is, again, false because 33 major CEOs endorsed him. The question is, why actually do they want to manufacture this narrative? It's because Poilievre just cemented his hold on the party heading into the 2026 election. The Conservatives are unified. The media needs to create doubt to help Carney. And that's the real story. The real story is that Poilievre is a populist conservative. Different from traditional Bay Street conservatism. He's championing workers and small businesses over corporate elites. He'll negotiate with Trump pragmatically instead of making it personal. He's mending fences with Ford and Houston after the election friction. 87.4% is higher than Harper got, guys, after losing in 2004. Harper won 3 governments after that. If the Conservatives were divided, Poilievre wouldn't have won 87.4% support. That's massive. That's a landslide. The article even admits red versus blue Tory divisions are a thing of the past, guys. So why push the division narrative? It's because the Globe and Mail and other mainstream media are running interference for Carney. This is all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys liked today's episode. Please like, share, and subscribe. My name is Miloš Krajčnik. This is Connect News. Stay informed, stay curious, and God bless Canada.
This is Canada. Maple syrup and La Cabite. kick your ass all hockey season, ayy, ayy. Now